Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode number 2 of Talk Bolts to Me. I'm glad to be back with you all, and I'm glad that you're all back. For those of you who didn't listen to the first episode, or this is your first episode of the podcast, this is a new podcast I'm putting out all about the Chargers. I'm a huge Chargers fan, just like all of you, or else you guys wouldn't be here. And yeah, we're just going to break down everything Chargers, from free agency to draft to positional groups to breaking down the games and coaching decisions and everything. So, yeah, I'm really excited to be back with you guys. I know it took a little longer than expected to get the second episode out, but here we are. Also, another note for those of you that didn't listen to the first episode, I know the quality may not be so great. This is actually the very first podcast, the second episode of my very first podcast, and yeah, so the quality might not be great. The content should be good, and seeing the responses, and we'll see how successful it gets, or how many of you start listening, and we'll slowly increase the quality of the podcast for sure. Also plan on going live and Q&As and kind of getting you guys involved as much as possible, make it a very interactive podcast for you guys, because I think that's half the fun of sports, is interacting with people, talking to people, bringing guests on, debates, arguments, whatever. So that's definitely the plan. It's going to include all of you guys. So I hope you stick with me, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. So again, for those of you that didn't listen to the first episode, it was just basically a overall introduction of myself, and why I'm making the podcast, and then kind of an overall look of the season and just my opinions on the season, and good things, bad things, and areas to improve. So the next several episodes, I guess the next 4 episodes, are going to be breaking down the season a little more in depth into quarters. 4 games in each quarter, except for of course the last quarter. We'll have 5. So this week's episode is all about the first quarter of the football season for the Chargers. So games 1 through 4. So yeah, that's what today's episode is going to be about. And so yeah, let's get into the very first game. Of course, was the opener against Washington, in Washington D.C. Of course, Chargers won this game, as you guys all know. It was actually a pretty impressive win, I think, because that first week of the season, you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't have film on people from the season. Obviously you have film on players from previous seasons and all of that, but if you have things change every year for teams, and they implement new game plans and offensive schemes, defensive schemes. So that first week is always just like, you look back on it, sometimes you're just like, wow, like what happened? How did the Saints, I believe it was the Saints, how did the Saints just completely blow out the Packers or something? And the Packers looked like the worst team in week 1, and then obviously they made it to the playoffs, number 1 seed in the NFC, MVP, all of that. So yeah, week 1's always a little tricky. You kind of getting into the groove of things. And so yeah, I thought it was a good win, probably in my opinion their most impressive win of the first 4 games. At the time, I think people thought a lot higher of Washington. Maybe they were kind of like the darling picks of the NFL. I think a lot of people thought they were going to be in contention. They got the young defense, good defense that kind of carried them to the playoffs, even though it was a losing record last year. And they get Fitzpatrick, who might be the perfect guy to fit that Washington team. So going into the game, and after the game, it felt like a bigger win than it really was when you look back on it after the season. Anyways, so let's get a little bit into the game. First drive of the game was for the Chargers. Was impressive. They moved the ball down the field effectively. They played this a lot of short passes. They ran the ball well with Eckler and Roundtree, and just a lot of like short passes to Allen and to Williams and to Guyton. I really liked the play. The play near I think it was in the red zone. Yeah, it was within, I want to say, between the 10 and 15 yard line, and they lined up Keenan Allen in the backfield actually, and he ran like a little, I think what they call like a Texas route, Got the first down. It was six. It was 3rd and 5, and he got 6 yards. I'd like to see a little more of that, a little more creativity coming in, or lining up guys in the backfield, and receivers in the backfield, and just a little more creativity. We'll see how many times they actually run that play or run Allen in the backfield. I don't remember it happening very often, but it happened in the first drive of the first game of the season, and it was a nice little play. So overall, good first drive. 10-play drive, 75 yards, just kind of dinking dunking down the field, and yeah, they scored. It was a nice first drive. And then of course Washington gets the ball, and Chargers 3-and-out, back-to-back plays, pressure by Bosa. So yeah, they get them to punt the ball. Chargers not so successful on their second drive. They couldn't really get anything going. 3-and-out. The next drive for Washington's offense, they have good field position. I think there was like a shanked punt or something, but they start on the Chargers 48-yard line. Washington runs it 3 straight times. Okay, I told you guys in the first episode, Chargers basically invite teams to run. They have the 2 deep safeties. Okay, and basically what they do is, they don't want to get burned deep, and that's kind of the NFL now. Is so much passing, deep plays. The quarterbacks are just really good. Offensive schemes are really good. Defenses are limited, what they can do with all the rule changes. So, Chargers' philosophy is go ahead, run the ball between the 20s, and we're gonna lock it down when we get in that red zone, and when we need to. So yeah, Washington runs the ball 3 straight times, and they get a 30 yards on the first 2 runs, right? And they get down to, I think it was like the Chargers 17-yard line. So first and 10 from the Chargers 17. Next series is Chargers get a tackle for loss, makes it 2nd and 12, which basically means that the Washington, and most teams, when they get into that 2nd and 12, they have an unsuccessful run that goes for 3 yards or less, or even negative yards. They're going to feel like they need to pass the ball. Yeah. So Washington, that's what they do. They throw the ball in the next 2 plays. They get a 5-yard pass play, and then there's like a 2-yard scramble by Fitzpatrick. So this is kind of the model of the Chargers defense right here. Chargers have to kick a field goal, and Washington has to kick a field goal. Chargers force a field goal, and this is the philosophy that the Chargers are going to do. This is how they're going to play, forcing teams to kick field goals, especially when they start on your side of the field, where they have really good starting field position. Holding teams to field goals, to me, is a success. It's if you combine that thought with who your quarterback is and who you have on offense, you obviously have confidence that your offense can put up a lot of points. Holding teams to field goals is a success. Okay, so this is how the Chargers are going to play. This is exactly how they should play. All you really need to do, if teams are just going to want to run the ball constantly on first down, you get that. You get that stop. You get that one play. All you need is one player to make a play. Get the stop, for 0 yards, or even 1 or 2 or 3 yards, or negative yards ideally. And then these teams get into these 2nd and long type of situations, and the playbook starts to shrink. Sure, they could run it again. Most teams, when they're in that 2nd and long situation, they're not going to run it. They're going to feel like they need to pass the ball, and that plays right into the Chargers' strength. It's really hard to pass on the Chargers. At least during certain times of the year. I know they had a lot of injuries and later in the year, and there were some games where it just felt like teams can move the ball at will. But definitely that first half, the Chargers' pass defense was lights out. So, anyways, they force a field goal. Chargers get the ball again for their 3rd offensive drive. It's just another ugly drive. It was a pass to Guyton where he, for some reason, didn't look on 3rd and 6. Maybe could have made it. So just another ugly offensive drive. And then the Chargers go back on defense. Washington gets down the field quickly with a PI call. Yeah, nothing really here. I mean, the one thing I really want to look at is is their fourth offensive drive, and you guys are going to hear me talk about this a lot on the podcast, and it's a statistic called ADOT, and ADOT is basically average depth of target, and it's just showing, whether completed or not, doesn't matter. You can use it for receivers, running backs, quarterbacks, and it just shows like how far down the field are you throwing the ball. And I think with a quarterback like Herbert, you have to tap into his skill set, man. The guy looks so dominant sometimes when they're just pushing the ball down the field. And I'm not talking necessarily like 40, 50-yard bombs every time. I just mean like pushing the ball 8, 10, 15 yards down the field and just putting that pressure on the defenses that, it's so hard to stop. It opens up the run game, opens up, screens and short passes. And if you're constantly just trying to dink and dunk down the field, it can work, of course, like it worked in the first drive. But it just, you want to put that pressure, especially with Herbert and his big arm, mobility, and these receivers. The receivers we have aren't necessarily, they're not the Deebo Samuels or Cooper Kupps. You can't throw them a little screen and expect them to break 5 tackles. That's just not who they are. Allen and Williams, they're good route runners, and once they get the ball and you throw it to them 10, 15 yards down the field, and that's kind of their bread and butter anyways. So this fourth offensive drive, one of the better looking offensive drives, they finally start to push the ball down the field. They're throwing it 10, 15 yards down the field rather than these dink and dunks. And they end up with the field goal on the, they go 10 plays, 76 yards. They end up with a field goal. Keenan Allen dropped a pass on third down. That would have put them inside the 10 for sure, maybe inside the 5 with the first down. So they probably score a touchdown if he catches that. But, they get the field goal and they go up 10-3. Just overall in the Chargers' most impressive drives in these first 4 games that I looked at, and their most impressive drives were when they were pushing the ball down the field. Okay, they just looked like they could move the ball at will. Chargers, they continue to play good defense, obviously, in this game, and then they get to their fifth offensive drive, and it was actually a pretty good drive. So they had almost an 8-minute drive, and they take up almost all the time, the rest of the time in the first half, and they end up getting points, leads to a field goal. I think Guyton could have had a touchdown. It would have been a difficult catch, but not a difficult catch, but it would have been that wasn't an easy catch, but definitely could have had it. And you expect NFL caliber receivers to make it. But anyways, they kick a field goal. So at this point, they're up 13-6, I believe. Definitely could have been a bigger blowout. And the Chargers felt like they were controlling this whole game throughout the whole game and the first half. And the score could have been more. That dropped pass by Keenan Allen, even this Guyton one. The score could be more like 17-6 or something like that. And then they also ended the first half. Washington has 45 seconds left, no timeouts, and the Chargers allow them to get into field goal range. These ones are the killer. These are the ones where it's like, if you want to be a successful, good team, competing in the playoffs and for the Super Bowl, these are the type of scores you can't give up, right? You have 45 seconds left, and Washington has no timeouts. They start on their own, I think, 25-yard line. It's like you can't allow them to get into the field goal range. And Washington, I don't even think expected to get into field goal range. Again, Heineke's in at this point. They run the ball on first down. They get a decent run. Nothing huge, but they get a decent run, like 8 yards or something. And they're kind of like, they're not expecting to score. They're kind of, all right, let's see what happens. Let's see if Gibson busts a 20-yard run or something. But what happens is Joey Bosa gets a roughing the passer penalty, and it was a pretty bad roughing the passer penalty. You get a lot of them nowadays where you're like, man, that's so. There's nothing he could have done. There's nothing the defender could have done to not get roughing the passer. This one was like, okay, you could have easily have not gotten that penalty. So, anyways, that penalty basically puts them in field goal range, and so instead of being up, 17-6 and kind of the game a little bit in hand or something like that, Chargers are up 13-9, and the game's still, it's a 4-point game. You're on the road, East Coast. You're on the East Coast, pretty good team. So that's kind of the first half. I definitely think the Heineke coming in for Fitzpatrick really. Heineke has that backyard football style, and that could. I don't think it's sustainable for an entire season, and I don't think you're going to win a Super Bowl with Heineke or something. But when you game plan for someone like Fitzpatrick, and you go to someone like Heineke, they have very different skill sets. They're both kind of downfield passers, but they have very different skill sets, and so I think that kind of threw the Chargers off a little bit, allowed the Washington to make some plays and score some points. So is the first half. Again, I think the best drive was when Herbert was throwing the ball down the field. Defense looked good, got a lot of pressure. Okay, so again, Chargers felt in control, felt like they should be up by more. All right, so the second half starts, and I really think you kind of get the worst drive so far in the game for the Chargers on defense. And they allow Washington to kind of move the ball down the field, get a big play to Terry McLaurin. And Washington gets a touchdown, and they go up 16-13, So, and just like that, Washington's in charge of the game, kind of. They're up by 3 at home, and it really should be that the Chargers are probably still up, something like 17-13, even if they give up this touchdown. That's kind of what happens in the opening drive. The first drive for the Chargers in the second half, they're pushing the ball down the field again, pushing the ball, trying to get the ball down the field. Eckler looked good running the ball, and they get down to in the red zone again, 10-yard line, 9. I think it was maybe the 8-yard line, and they get that bogus. I don't know if you guys remember. There was that pretty bogus fumble where, to me, it looked more like a forward pass. But anyways, Herbert drops back to pass. He gets hit, throws the ball, and it goes all the way through the back of the end zone. So it's a good 25 yards that the ball travels forward. And it's ruled a fumble and a touchback Washington ball, right? So to me, again, it was really hard to see if they had called it. I don't know how they called it a fumble to begin with, in my opinion. That was the biggest gripe I had with it. Is like, how do you rule that one a fumble in live action, right? It just seemed like clearly a forward incomplete pass, and how it traveled 25 yards. It's like, how do you call that a fumble? And had they called it an incomplete pass, I think it would have stood as a incomplete pass. But they called it a fumble, and it stood as a fumble. So Chargers, even though they have a pretty nice drive, they go 12 plays, taking the ball down the field. No points, okay? They don't get any points. I mean, those are kind of the big plays. Obviously, the Chargers come back. They come back in this game, and they win the game. What was it, 20-16 or 17 or something like that they win. Just double check. Yeah, 20-16 that they win, because they miss a few extra points. Washington misses a field goal. Chargers get a little lucky. They had a nice forced fumble by Asante Samuel Jr. and Kaiser White that set up the Chargers kind of go ahead touchdown. Yeah. The one thing I really liked about this game, and it was one of my favorite drives in the entire year, was the last drive So they get that fumble. They start on the 3 yard line in Washington. You got to get a touchdown. They do get it to Mike Williams. Go up 20-16. Okay, so you're up 4 points. Washington gets the ball, and they force a punt. Yeah, which is probably the right decision because I think there was still about 7 minutes left in the game at that point. So they're, Washington's thinking, all right, we'll have a chance to get the ball back. Hopefully, only down by 4, maybe down by 7. And the first time obviously it was the first game of the year, but I realized, excuse me, something was different about this team was that Chargers got the ball, 6:43 left, and they keep the ball for the rest of the fourth quarter to ice the game. This is something we would have never, I don't even remember the last time I've seen it, like a drive like that of, over 5 minutes, almost 7 minutes long, and to ice the game. And just the plays, there was a 3rd and 16 on their own 12, and they threw the ball down the field to Allen. There was a 3rd and 3, and they throw the ball down the field to KJ Hill. There's a 3rd and 7, and they throw the ball down the field to Mike Williams. All these plays, especially that 3rd and 16 on your own 12, I can't tell you how many teams and how many, especially the Chargers teams in the past, but most teams in the NFL, they probably just run the ball, concede that they've gone 3 and out, they're not going to get 16 yards, punt it back to Washington, And now Washington gets the ball with pretty good field position, probably around their own 40-yard line. They have plenty of time to go down. They're only down by 4. Who knows what happens, right? So yeah, just those 3. They had 4. Actually, had 4 third downs where they threw it. 3 of them where they're throwing it down the field. There was also a 3rd and 4 at that was the second to last play or third to last play of the game. 3rd and 4 on Washington's 16-yard line. They could have run it. Use Washington's last time out, kick the field goal, go up by 7, and maybe have basically Washington have a minute and a half to get a touchdown, I think, with no timeouts. But no, they threw it. Yeah, they throw it to Keenan Allen. They get the first down. Game over. Basically saying, we're not going to let you have a chance. We're going to put it in the hands of our best players, Herbert, Allen, Williams, Eckler, and we're going to decide when this game ends. Not you, kind of, right? So overall thoughts on the game, Chargers should have won a little more comfortably than they did. Again, there's a couple drop passes and the fumble that probably wasn't a fumble from the roughing the passer led to a field goal. I thought this was Herbert's one of his best games of the season. Again, I know they only scored 20 points, but if you go back and look at a few things, it's they could have easily put up 30 points, 30 plus points on this team. Herbert had an ADOT out of 8.5. Again, that's the average depth of target, so it's just, are you throwing the ball down the field? His season average is 7.9, so this is obviously a game that was above his season average. And for those of you that don't know, if you have an ADOT of about 8.5, that's usually going to put you in that top 12, 10 to 12, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower. Top 10 to 12 of quarterbacks in that range, okay? It's above average. 7.9, I think Herbert was, near the bottom, maybe 27th, 28th in the entire league of average depth of target, which is a little crazy when you think about Herbert can throw the ball, his arm. That's what everyone talks about. His arm is just, he just rips the ball, and it's it seems like you want to utilize that, There's a reason why Tom Brady, has most of his offenses, they're kind of dink and dunk and matriculate down the field, and it kills teams. And Brady's great, but he didn't have a huge arm, He had a good arm. He didn't have an amazing arm. That's why he was a 6th, 7th round pick. And just you got to play to the strengths of your guys. And I just really feel like with Herbert, and when they're pushing the ball down the field and putting all that pressure on that defense, that's when they really look the best. So, again, he had an ADOT in 8.5, which is pretty good. You want to get 8.5 plus during games, in my opinion. A lot of drop passes. It was 5 drop passes. So he actually had a adjusted completion percentage, which is basically it takes out drops and throwaways and just looks at passes that that were aimed. Aimed passes, I guess, is a good word. Um, Anyways, he had an 80% completion percentage, which was fantastic. Offensive line played well, and the two big guys on defense played well, Derwin James and Joey Bosa. So overall, I thought it was their most complete win, offensively and defensively together. Definitely their best offensive game of the first quarter. I'm talking about not the whole year, but the first quarter, and probably most complete game overall of the first quarter. All right, so the next game is week 2, their home opener, and of course it's against the Cowboys. And I think we all kind of remember this game as a game that the Chargers probably should have won. I think they outplayed the Cowboys to a certain extent, and they definitely had the chance to win that game, and they didn't. Of course, they lost. Was it 20-17, and kind of a strange game for both teams, really. Cowboys basically come out hot. First 3 drives, Cowboys look unstoppable, right? Chargers do get an interception on the second drive, Cowboys' second drive. I think it was kind of a miscommunication, or I think it was Cooper and Dak and Asante Samuel got the interception. But basically, first 3 drives for the Cowboys, they looked unstoppable. Okay, and they're up 14. They get 2 touchdowns. They're up 14 nothing after that, after the first 3 drives. Chargers offense looks okay. First drive, Trayvon Diggs just makes a great play to get the interception. The Chargers were moving the ball. I think they got 40 yards in the first couple plays. Diggs makes a great play. It's going to happen. So, second drive, Chargers actually start off in Cowboys territory. Hardly move the ball, lots of short passes, and they get a field goal. So I think those are the things you kind of need to clean up a little bit. It's like if you're starting in favorable field position, 40 on your own 40 to their own side of the field, you gotta most likely you got to get some touchdowns, right? You definitely got to score, but you want to get touchdowns. So yeah. Again, at this point, it's 14-3. Cowboys are looking unstoppable, and it was the third offensive drive for the Chargers. They looked good. They had a really nice drive. They went 10 plays, 75 yards, lots of short passes and runs, but they moved the ball down the field. Okay, they went for 2 here. So basically, they got the touchdown. They were down 14-9, and they went for 2. I'm not really sure what the reasoning is. I'd be a little curious. Not that I necessarily disagree with it, but what's the reasoning of going for 2 in that situation to go 14-11? What does the math say? What does the logic say there, rather than just kicking the extra point? But anyways, they get the 2 points, 14-11. Again, basically the whole first half, the Cowboys looked pretty unstoppable. Chargers got an interception. They got a turnover on downs, which was kind of helped because the Cowboys had some penalties on that drive. Chargers offense looked okay, and yeah, their defense was just basically they're very lucky to only be down 14-11. Chargers missed a field goal, but they're very lucky to only be down 14-11 at half. Because the Cowboys were looking pretty unstoppable. So the Chargers get the ball at the start of the second half, and this is actually the first appearance of Staley, the madman that goes for it on 4th down, and everyone wants to say, he's crazy for doing it. I think the more, as I go back and watch, and I kind of felt this way even just the first watching it live throughout the season, is it's very calculated. He's not a madman when he goes his 4th down decisions and things like that. There's a method to his madness, and this Cowboys game was kind of the first time we see it. It was 4th down on their own 35. Chargers opening drive stalls, right away. It's 4th down on their own 35. At this point, you got to think about the game a little bit, right? Chargers are only down 3. The Cowboys basically had their way on offense with the Chargers defense. They looked unstoppable. Only got 2 touchdowns, but they could have easily have been up 28. Had 28 points or 21 points after the first half. Chargers offense hasn't been that great. They had a field goal drive in which they started off in Cowboys territory, I believe, and they had a nice touchdown drive, but that's about it. Chargers offense wasn't looking that great. Defense wasn't looking that. It was looking terrible actually, and I've heard Staley say this before. Like, there's times when he goes for it on fourth down, and you're just like, "What are you doing? You're deep in your own territory." And he's just saying, look, like, our offense needed a boost. We needed to get going. We kick it back to them. They're probably going to score. So it was like fourth. It was literally inches. And I agree with it. I think it was a good decision. Herbert did a quarterback sneak for actually the second time in as many games. And I feel like, I'll obviously see this when I go back and watch all the games, but I feel like they didn't use quarterback sneaks a lot near the second half of the season, or there were plays where I was like, why don't they just sneak it with Herbert? He can move. He's tall. But it's interesting to see they've had two so far in the first 2 weeks, and they're both successful. So we'll keep an eye on that. Once they get that fourth down conversion, they start throwing the ball down the field, and this became their most successful, impressive drive, in my opinion. 13 plays, 61 yards. You had that fourth down conversion. It ended in a field goal, and it could have been a touchdown if there was a little better pass to Cook on third down. But anyways, I thought this play was, even though they only got a field goal, I thought this was one of their better drives for sure. So the Cowboys' first possession of the second half kind of looked the same as the whole game. Started off badly, Dallas moving the ball. Fortunately, Derwin James comes up, back-to-back plays. Basically forces Dallas to punt. So Derwin James came up clutch there. Had some nice plays. The next offensive drive for the Chargers is, again, another ticky-tacky. Like, it was a holding call on Parham. It was a 36-yard touchdown pass. It ended up coming back because of a holding call against Parham. And, it was tough. It's one of those where it's like, man, you could maybe call that on every play. Why did you decide on that play? Ended in an interception, unfortunately. They got the ball down the field. They moved it 82 yards, got the ball down the field. Keenan Allen fell in the end zone. There was an interception. That was their second offensive possession of the second half. Sorry. And we know how this game ends. It's the Chargers get the ball down the field. They have a nice. This is actually their seventh possession. Their last of the game, and they move the ball down the field quite well. And of course, they get down to the red zone inside the 5, and they had that touchdown to Cook that was called back. Basically, what happened was, for some reason, I don't know why. So the rule of like the illegal motions and shifts is you can have one guy moving as much as they want. Right, they can be moving as the ball snapped. You see it all the time on jet sweeps and stuff. But if you have two guys moving, those players need to be set for at least a second. Both of them need to be set for at least a second, or else it's illegal. It's a penalty. So what happened was, Cook was coming in motion. I believe he was the only one that was supposed to be moving on that play. For some reason, Mike Williams, who's on the right receiver spot, for some reason he kind of moves backwards a little bit. It didn't seem like he needed to. And that instantly means two people are moving. Yeah. And so Cook is moving, doesn't set because that's not what he was supposed to do. Touchdown gets called back. Chargers get a field goal. Cowboys do what they basically had done all game, drive the ball down the field and kick a game-winning field goal. So, disappointing. Really felt like they should have won that game. I think the offense could have been called better, especially in the red zone. They really struggled in the red zone. Their best drives came when they were pushing the ball down the field. One of them didn't kind of turn into, or both of them kind of turned into, one was a field goal, one was an interception, but they looked good doing it. Defense kind of locked things down in the second half. They only gave up 6 points in 3 quarters after giving 2 touchdowns up in the first. So I thought the defense kind of locked things down, and they gave up a lot of yards, but they They clamped down when they needed to, basically. Herbert played well. I thought he missed, like his misses in this game felt big. Um, the interception, his first interception, a miss to Cook. I also think there was a miss to Mike Williams deep, and yeah, it just felt like his misses were big misses. There weren't a lot, but they were big. His ADOT was very low. We talked about that earlier. This one was 6.2. Okay, well below his season average of 7.9 or 7.5, I believe. And he was pressured a lot more in the Washington game. I didn't mention it, but he was hardly pressured. The offensive line looked great. I think he was pressured on like 14% of passes. This game, 24%, which is still not very high. That's if you're first season, if you're in that mid 20% range, you're going to be near the top of most protected passers. So I don't think we can really blame it on that. He's just a lot of penalties, a lot of penalties. So that's kind of how the second game went, and felt a little bit more like the older Chargers. Kind of, they didn't blow it. They just kind of made stupid mistakes, and so yeah, one on the season. All right, so the third game of the season, we all remember is that first game against the Chiefs in Kansas City. Remember feeling a little nervous about this game, thinking, man, they should have beat the Cowboys, been 2-0, and now they got to play the Chiefs. And obviously the Chiefs had some struggles this year, and especially in the beginning and middle of the year. But anyways, so this game was another interesting game. I know some of you would be shocked to hear, but I didn't necessarily feel like offensively, again, that this game didn't feel as good as the Washington game. And I know in this game they scored 30 points, and in the Washington game they only scored 20, and it's kind of like, what do you mean? But and you'll see why. We'll kind of get into it. This was obviously the turnover fest, game, especially in that first half of the season, of the game. They basically get the Chiefs interception, fumble on their first three drives, right? And the Chargers, that's just not going to happen very often. If Chiefs' first four drives were interception, fumble, punt, and it's kind of fluky. I know the fumbles were kind of, they were forced. They forced the fumbles, so you can't just say like, oh, it was complete luck. But turnovers are kind of a lot of times luck or miscommunication or something. You can't count on, oh, we're going to get a turnover this drive or something. Like, you can't game plan that way, right? So yeah, they get 3 turnovers in the Chiefs' first 3 drives, and then on the Chiefs' 4th drive they punt. So you're feeling pretty good. Chargers for punt on their first 2 drives, and then get 2 touchdowns on their 3rd and 4th drive. An interesting note on that 3rd drive, and I know I told you we're going to keep track of this. They actually had a 3rd quarterback sneak by Herbert, so that's 3 in 3 games, and we'll kind of keep an eye on if that goes away at the end of the end of the year. They moved the ball well, and they matriculated it down the field. 9 plays, 51 yards, a touchdown. Good. No, never going to be disappointed with that, right? Their 4th drive, though, I thought was really good. They moved the ball really, really well here. Good balance of plays, of run, intermediate, pushing the ball down the field. This was a 6-play, 53-yard drive. I thought this was their best drive maybe of the entire game. They went for 2 because Vizcaino missed the extra point on the first one. They basically end their last 2 drives of the first half. Their 5th drive was a punt, and then they got the ball on like the 9 with 20 seconds left. And so they just went into half with a 14-3 lead. Chiefs do get a field goal. Here. They had another illegal shift. Guyton kind of killed the 5th offensive drive that led to a punt. He kind of dropped. There was a bomb touchdown that he could have caught. Again, it would have been like that was a good catch, but something you kind of expect NFL receivers to make more often than not. Hit him in the hands, basically. Hit him in the hands, both of his hands, and there was a guy there in his way, but you expect him to make it. There was also an illegal shift. That was Guyton's fault, and they actually went for it on fourth down, um, they were just over the 50-yard line. Um, and this is another one you're kind of like, you're up 14-0 at this point, right? Yeah, you're up 14-0 at this point. It's like, if you can pin the Chiefs deep, there's not a lot of time left. I think there's 2-3 minutes left in the second half. You could potentially go up 14-0, or the Chiefs have to punt the ball and you get good field position and you can score. But I like the aggressiveness of this call. And actually, they get a nice play to Keenan Allen, but it was the illegal shift negated that. But I like the aggressiveness because at this point, it's kind of like, you've gotten 3 turnovers on the Chiefs, and you can't expect to get any more the rest of the game, and you're only up 14-0. It's not like your offense has been, rolling or something. You're up 14-0 with forcing 3 turnovers and, having good field position on both of those touchdowns. They started on their own 49 and their own 47 on both of those touchdowns. Like, you're not going to get that type of field position a lot. So I kind of don't blame them for going for it, and it worked out, but the illegal shift kind of negated that, so they ended up punting. And then into the second half, which was a completely different story. It felt like a completely different game. So Chiefs get the ball and starting in the second half, and it's the first of 3 straight 70-plus yard, 10-plus play touchdown drives by the Chiefs. And it really just shows why you have to be aggressive against a team like the Chiefs. Even though you're up 14-0, it's not safe. 14 points is not safe against a team like the Chiefs, especially in the NFL nowadays. You just can't assume like, oh, we're good, and this is why. So they get 3, they get the opening drive, they drive down 12 plays, 75 yards, score a touchdown. Chargers falter. They have to punt. They have a terrible first drive of the third quarter. They have to punt. And it was kind of a momentum-changing 3-and-out because now the Chiefs, all right, it's 14-10, right? It's 14-10 at this point. Chiefs are getting the ball back. Boom, they make it. They drive down 70 yards, 10-plus plays, second touchdown in as many drives. The one good thing, I guess, is, and it's kind of a good thing in my opinion, is that at least they're making them work for it. They're making them drive 10-plus plays or go 10-plus plays in 4 or 5 minutes. They're not just getting that quick scores, which I think can be a little more demoralizing to your team and kind of like psychologically keeps you in it. It's like, all right, we're making them struggle and they're making good plays. We're not blowing it necessarily. Like, they're making really good plays. That's why they're kind of scoring, and we're confident that that's not going to happen the entire game. Now the 8th offensive drive for the Chargers, so their second drive of the second half, I think was a huge drive for them, because if they punt it or even kick a field goal, I think all the momentum's in the Chiefs' favor, right? They punt it, obviously they're down. They're down 17-14 at this point. Okay, so if they punt it, terrible. Even if they kick a field goal, it's still 17-17, and the Chiefs have scored, driven the ball 70-plus yards twice in a row. So this was a huge drive. Best drive of the game by far. They went for it on 4th and 4 on Kansas City's 28. Again, showing that aggressiveness of just like, the Chiefs are scoring. The Chiefs are clicking now. The Chiefs offense is clicking. We need to score touchdowns. We cannot settle for field goals. And 4th and 4, only 4 yards. I think more often than not, Chargers are going to go for that. And also, if you look at their average yards per play, I think it's well over 4 yards. 4-point-something yards. I'll have to double check that, but within 4 or less yards, I don't think these are crazy calls at all, even though, take the points, whatever. And but anyways, I think this was a huge drive, and I think if they punt it or kick a field goal, I think they lose this game. But they don't, and they get a touchdown, okay? And so they retake the lead. So at this point, it's 21-17, right? 21-17. Chargers are up. Chiefs get the ball back again. They're looking unstoppable. Third straight drive, they just move the ball down the field, 70 plus yards, 10 plus plays, and score a touchdown to retake the lead, 24-21. So basically, Chargers get the ball back, drive it down the field pretty quickly, pushing it down the field. They get down to the 1. They actually get a touchdown, but again, the illegal shift for, killed them in the Cowboys game, killed them earlier in the Chiefs game, killed them again in this game. And so that puts them at 4th and 6, basically. Again, they're down 3 at this point. 4th and 6, now you're getting to okay, look, 6 yards is below our average yards per play. We probably shouldn't go for it. This kind of shows that Staley's just not some kind of madman, right? You're down, I think they're on the 10 or 12 yard line. Easy take the point situation. It's not a long kick. You got 6 yards to go, at least tie it up. I honestly don't think I would have even have been upset had they decided to go for it, because it was basically what you're doing is you're tying the game 24-24. Good. There's still over 2 minutes left, and the Chiefs have all their timeouts, and you're just thinking I think in these situations, more often than not, this just feels like a we've lost this game type of situation, right? Yeah, you tie it up, you get 24-24, but the other team has over 2 minutes or even under 2 minutes a little bit, and all their timeouts, and it just feels like this is a perfect situation. This is how we lose the game. Teams are too good now. To drive down into field goal range is not that hard. It's 40, 35. I mean, it's 35 yards for a very long field goal. That's all you have to drive, 35 yards. 40 yards for a pretty bakeable field goal. So I wouldn't have necessarily minded if they, went for it on 4th and 6 and tried to get that touchdown. But I think, they kicked the field goal. It obviously worked out because the next play, next drive, Chargers get a huge interception. Huge interception. And then now they're in position to take the lead. They get the ball at the minute. There was a minute 40 left. I think they have all their timeouts. They get the ball, and they're trying to score, right? So it's 4th and 4 on the Chiefs' 31.5 yard line. So you're looking at a 49 yard field goal, which, especially for the kicker that the Chargers had, not a guaranteed. This is a guaranteed field goal. So I like the decision of going for it on 4th and 4, especially because at this point the Chiefs had all their timeouts. So if you kick that field goal, you basically you can't assume you're going to get another interception or turnover, even though you've had 4 this game. You can't assume you're going to get another one. So be aggressive, get that first down. Again, it's only 4 yards. They get it. It was also windy that day, by the way, and I just like it. I like the aggressiveness. It just shows Staley trusts Herbert. He puts the ball in crunch time in his best player's hands, and that's all we can ask for. Then there's that 4th and 9. Actually, I'm sorry, that 4th and 4, there was a false start, so it turned into a 4th and 9. And so at that point, the field goal is out of the question for sure. You don't want to punt the ball necessarily. So they actually went for it on 4th and 9. Again, pretty ballsy, and then they throw it to Jalen Guyton, and they get a pass interference. And I really like with Herbert that, and I remember this in the Raiders game as well on a big 4th down. The Raiders game at the end of the year. They went to Palmer on a huge 4th down play, season over play, and they went to Josh Palmer. And we'll kind of keep an eye out for this throughout the whole season. But it seems like Herbert doesn't really care. He trusts himself in his arm, and he's going to go to anyone who's on the field. It's not going to be just Allen or Williams or something. He's going to go to anyone, and that leads to they're going to be unstoppable, right? It's not like the Packers where if you need something, you go to Devontae Adams. Well, we'll double Devontae Adams. No one else can do anything. No. anyone who's out there, we're going for it. The one questionable call this game was when the Chargers got a first down like within like I think it was on like the 10-yard line, and they basically could have like knelt the ball down twice. Chiefs had I think one timeout, and they could have took a knee a couple of times and just kicked the game-winning field goal. Game over. And instead they were aggressive and they went for the touchdown on the first down, which is great, but they gave the Chiefs 32 seconds and a timeout to be able to tie the game up rather than just like kicking a game-winning field goal. So I thought that was a little questionable. I wasn't sure what the reasoning there is, but it worked out. They won. Chargers now at this point are 2-1, looking pretty good, right? It felt like a big win in Kansas City. So yeah, my overall thoughts on this game is probably a little different from most people, because when they look at the box scores and you look at the numbers and like, oh, Herbert, what do you have, 4 touchdowns or something, and they scored 30 points. Oh, this must have been a great game. I didn't think it was that great offensively. And even defensively, I mean, they made plays on defense, but offensively, scoring 30 points, but 3 of the 4 touchdown drives, they had really good field position. They started on their own 49, their own 47, and their own 41. A lot due to these turnovers. So I think when you look at that and you look at they did force and get 4 turnovers on the Chiefs, like they probably should have scored more. I really think Staley's aggressiveness and going for it on 4th down was a big part of them winning this game. And I don't think it's fair that like he got a lot of criticism near the end of the year of like, why aren't you, especially in that second Chiefs game of like, he was aggressive and it didn't really work out. And people were saying like, oh, you should have just kicked a field goal and we would have won. And then he doesn't get the credit. Well, what about the 3rd game of the year when they beat the Chiefs? His aggressiveness was a huge reason why they won the game. Yeah. So, overall, I didn't really think, I definitely thought the Washington game still was the best game, most complete game, the best offensive game. Defense even in this game didn't particularly play that well. They did force for all those turnovers, those 4 turnovers, which was huge. And sometimes that's going to happen, Chiefs are a good team, and the ADOT again, to touch on that, ADOT was 7.1, so below the season average again. So now we're looking at, we've had 3 games, we've had 2 that are below the season average. ADOT, the Cowboys and the Chiefs, and their offense didn't look too great in both of those games. And 1 which was over their average, the Washington game, and I thought their offense looked the best. Didn't result in the best score necessarily, but I thought their offense looked the best in that game. So just something to think about. Pressure rate was right around the season average, 26%, which isn't terrible. That's not the reason. That's not going to be a reason why you lose the game. If you're pressured on 26% of your passes, that's kind of the number you want to shoot for, to be like, okay, their pressure wasn't the reason why we lost this game, which isn't the story for the next game. So yeah, we get into the 4th game, the last game of the first quarter of the season, and it's against the Raiders at home, Monday Night Football. And I thought this game was the defense's best game in the first quarter. Again, I thought the most complete game, offense and defense, special teams, was the Washington game for the whole team. I thought the best offensive game was the Washington game, and I thought the best defensive game was this game. They were shutting down the Raiders, and the defense is a huge part in why the Chargers won this game, because the offense didn't look that great. First drive was fantastic, 12 plays, 75 yards, a good mix of short passing, good runs, down the field passing, get that touchdown. And it looks, that's always nice when you come out and you drive a 7-minute drive, 75 yards, score a touchdown. You're feeling good, like I said, the defense played fantastically. The first 6 drives for the Raiders, it was punt, 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 downs, punt, punt, and then end of half. Yeah. So their first 7 drives, they had 7 drives in the first quarter. In the first half, and they maybe had 30 total yards or something. So the Chargers defense was just suffocating. They were stuffing the run on the first down, which made the Raiders have to throw the ball, and they were getting pressure on the Raiders, and but conversely, after that first drive for the Chargers didn't look that great, at least until the middle of the second quarter. So Chargers get the touchdown on the first drive, and then they have 4 pretty bad drives of punt, a turnover on downs on a fake punt that probably could have had it, but Hunter Renfrow made a really good play. So it was punt, downs, punt, punt. Okay, after their first drive, 75-yard touchdown. They weren't looking very good. So even though they were just suffocating the Raiders' offense, the Chargers were only up 7-0 well into the second quarter. Yeah. I thought their best drive of the night at that point was their 6th offensive drive, where they went 60 plays, 80 yards, and they were pushing the ball down the field again. They were running it well. They were pushing that ball again. When I say push the ball down the field, I'm not saying like, oh, you need to throw 50-yard bombs, because obviously those are low percentage. But again, throwing it more than just like 5 yards down the field, pushing it to 10, 12, 15 yards, that's when their offense just looks so good, and Herbert just looks so unstoppable. Obviously you need the you need other things to kind of work out, but it was just, I thought their 6th offensive drive was their best, and it was the one where they were pushing the ball down the field at the most. And then their last drive of the first half was also a good drive, just a good balance of plays. Raiders couldn't stop them. Overall, solid drive. You're never going to complain about these 9 plays, 69 yards, turns into a touchdown. So that was the kind of the first half. So in the second half, the Chargers, unfortunately, at this point they're up 21-0. They're kind of the games in feels like it's the game's controlled, but the Chargers kind of stumble out the gates in the second half and don't kind of put the Raiders away. It was just kind of a very inconsistent game. I know they scored 28 points, and they had the 4 touchdown drives, but they never felt like they put the Raiders away till the very end of the game, and they really should have, because they were just dominating them on defense. But anyways, the Raiders get the ball, start of the second half. It's the first drive that the Raiders look competent. Chargers defense actually wasn't terrible, even though Raiders drove 78 yards on 11 plays, scored a touchdown. It wasn't a terrible defensive stand. The Raiders were just making plays. That's kind of how I describe it. They were helped out a little bit. There was 20 yards of defensive penalties, but also the Raiders were just making plays. And, that's just going to happen. When you're playing NFL caliber talent, you're not going to shut teams out. Shutouts are very, very, very rare in the NFL, especially nowadays. And the other teams are just going to have drives where they just make plays, and you don't do anything bad and necessarily, but it's just you give up these plays and they look good. So anyways, Raiders score a touchdown. It's 21-7. Like I told you, Chargers come out the gates. Their first 2 drives in the second half were both punts. They weren't terrible drives. They did move the ball on both of them. There was their first drive of the second half, their 8th drive of the game, they went for it on 4th and 2 from their own 45. And I kind of, again, it's one of those, you're like, okay, you're up 21-7. You're on your own 45. It's 4th down. Why not just punt it, play defense, and play it the safe. I kind of like this aggressiveness. It's 2 yards, and I think the average play. I'll have to get the exact number, but I know for sure the average yards per play for the entire season for the Chargers was well over 4 yards. So that's why if you see anything 4 yards or less, it's like, well, half the time we run a play, we're getting more than 4 yards, and this is 2 yards, so it's even a higher percentage, right? And I just really think, like, if the Chargers score on this drive, even if it's just a field goal, they start to take the Raiders out of their game. The game starts becoming desperation for the Raiders, right? Again, even if it's just a field goal, it's going to be maybe 5-6 minutes left in the third quarter. If they kick a field goal, the Raiders are down 21 points, 17 points, so 3 possessions. But if they get a touchdown, then it's almost for sure you're game over, right? And you start making that pressure on the Raiders, make them one-dimensional. They have to, there's so much more that goes into just like going for it on fourth down out of your own greed. Like, it just changes the whole complexion of the game. They actually get it. They get the fourth down, but the drive stutters. Basically, the pass rush starts to take over, and just like Max Crosby was just abusing Storm Norton on the right side, and it was like a foreshadowing for the last game of the year because the same thing happened. They were just, I think, I almost called him Rivers. I think Herbert was under pressure like 36% of the time, or something crazy like that. That's the number when you start getting over 30% or in the high 20s. You're starting to say, okay, their pass rush made a huge difference and was a big reason why, either you struggled or you lost the game. Yeah. So anyways, the drive stutters, it wasn't terrible. They moved the ball. It was 9 plays, but they have to punt. And then the Raiders score again. They get a huge pass interference call on, I think it was on Asante Samuel guarding Ruggs. And it was just kind of unfortunate because it was an underthrown ball. So Ruggs kind of stopped, and that made Asante Samuel run into him. Like, it wasn't an egregious, like, what are you doing? You pulled him down type of pass interference. It was like Asante Samuel was trying to keep up, and had it been a better pass, it wouldn't have been pass interference. But anyways, Raiders go down, they score, so now it's 21-14. And it's kind of like, okay, what's going on? Because it felt like the Chargers were completely in control of this game the whole time, but they never put them away, really. Luckily, the Chargers' third drive of the second half, they basically... Oh, no. So the next drive, the Chargers again move the ball. 9 plays, 37 yards. But again, the pressure ends up killing the drive. They punt it. The next Raiders drive after their 2 touchdown drives, they actually have a good defensive stand. They give up on first down a huge play to Ruggs, which starts to feel like, okay, this game's changing. They scored 2 touchdowns and 2 back-to-back drives. Chargers punted twice. 21-14. You just got a huge play to Ruggs, but luckily the Chargers shut down the Raiders after that long play, and they forced a field goal, and it actually ended up being a missed field goal, which was lucky for the Chargers, right? But the fact that, they gave up that big play, they locked it down, forced the Raiders to kick a pretty long field goal. They did a good job. It was a good defensive stand after that big play. So Chargers get the ball back, and they finally score a touchdown, since first time since in the second half. It was an absolutely necessary touchdown or points. You had to score these points. At this point, it's the fourth quarter, early in the fourth quarter, but it's the fourth quarter, and since they haven't done anything in the second half, and the Raiders are actually looking pretty good, and Raiders probably should only be down by like 4 points, and so you got to score here. They went for it on 4th and 2 on the 50-yard line. I think it was a good call. Again, Raiders had all the momentum, and the Chargers offense really needed to get going, and it was only 2 yards. So up until this point in the fourth in the first 4 games, and then the first quarter of the season, there hasn't been one fourth down call where I've been like, "What are you doing? Pulling my hair out." They've all made sense when you look at it, and you look at something in a vacuum. And what I mean by that, like you're just looking at this one decision, this one play, this one fourth down call, and nothing else. They look a lot worse. But when you look at it in the context of the entire game, it's very different. Yeah, the aggressiveness against the Chiefs, which turned out to be necessary. Going for it against the Cowboys when their offense was stuttering, and now going for it now when the Raiders were making a comeback and their offense was on the verge of punting it 3 straight times. Yeah. But yeah, it was a great drive. Got a touchdown. They took a lot of time off the clock, so good. Next, Chargers get an interception, which kind of seals the game. Basically, Derwin James gets a nice interception, and at this point, it's 28-14, 28-14 with I think 3.5 minutes left or something. So it's basically over. So the next drive is just it's a killing clock drive. Yeah, you're just trying to kill the clock. So game ends, and the Chargers win 28-14. Again, they were in control of that game for 3/4 of the game, and it wasn't. There was a small part in the mid-third to early fourth where it felt like the momentum was changing, but the Chargers ended up locking it down. And I just thought, again, the defense won this game. It was a complete game. I know that, again, the Chargers scored 28 points, which is pretty good for most games, but for how well the defense was playing, and they should have scored more, in my opinion. They looked good at times on the offense, but the pressure was just killing drives. I think the Raiders' pressure was probably killed 2, maybe 3 drives, which is huge. That's when you only have, when you have 10 drives in a game and 30% of them are being killed by pressure, that's huge. Again, this is probably the second best offensive game, and it was one of the higher ADOT games of the year. It was lower than the Washington game, but higher than the season average of the ADOT. So, I thought they looked pretty good at times. Never really felt like the Raiders were in it. So to kind of wrap this second episode up, the podcast, this was the overall first quarter of the season, the first 4 games, it was the best in terms of wins and win percentage. Not sure if it was the best in terms of just how the team looked, but they went 3-1, so it was their best win, total wins and win percentage of any of the quarters throughout the season. They were in first place, that's what you want to ask for. Like, that's all you can ask for, really. Is you're winning. They were winning games. They weren't losing games. They weren't blowing games. They were winning games. They were 3-1, which was something we, as Chargers fans, weren't used to. I thought the offense overall looked inconsistent. Whenever they were throwing the ball down the field, it looked more impressive, right? Again, best offensive game was, to me, against Washington. Best defensive game was against the Raiders. Probably best complete game was against Washington. Herbert's ADOT, average depth of target, throughout the first quarter was 7.7, which is just slightly below the season average and near the bottom of the league. So I really feel like it's like, man, you have this huge talent, huge arm in Herbert. Got to throw the ball down the field more. Pressure rate wasn't too high. It was right around the season average of 27%. Defense looked good, I thought. Going back and watching the first quarter, I was actually impressed by the defense because I kind of had, I guess, more of a negative outlook on them, on how they played. But I thought they played well in the first quarter and kept them in every game, basically. Kept them in the Washington game, obviously the Cowboys game. The 5 turnovers against the Chiefs. The Chiefs game is probably where I don't know. Chiefs and Cowboys, they didn't look great, but they kept them in the game. Yeah. Looking at the ADOTs of the receivers, you had Keenan Allen, which was 9.2 average depth of target. So he's, his whether he caught it or not, where he was being thrown the ball, he was about 9 yards down the field. That's what that means. Yeah, that's right around his career average. That's what Keenan Allen is. He's been in the league since 2013. Nothing's going to change. This is who Keenan Allen is. Mike Williams' average at the target was a little higher at 10.3. Felt like they should have utilized Mike Williams a little more, maybe a little more deep, pushing the ball down the field. But he had a great first quarter of the year, as you all remember. So one thing I noticed that I didn't realize until I went back and watched it was I liked how they were using Jalen Guyton a lot. I liked it and I didn't like it. I liked how they were throwing screens to him and giving him reverses or those little shot put, jet sweep passes, and he did well in a lot of those. For the entire season for wide receivers, he broke 7 tackles. And just to put that in context a little bit, that was tied for 37th in the entire league. And that was tied with the same amount as Mike Williams had all year, the same amount as Keenan Allen had all year. And Guyton had that and much less, he caught the ball way less than those other guys. So he kind of has that elusiveness. He obviously has the speed, but he kind of has like that elusiveness that maybe they get him involved a little more in that way. And I felt like the reason why I was surprised by it is because I feel like they weren't using him that way in the second half of the year. So I'll keep an eye on that for you guys. Yeah, I just felt like, if you can get like obviously you're not going to have someone like Deebo Samuel, but if you can kind of add that little something to the offense where you have this guy who can kind of take he catch the ball and he can take it 40 yards for a touchdown because he can break tackles and he has the speed. We kind of need that. And I don't think Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are those, and even Palmer. I think Palmer is more like a Keenan Allen type than anything. To me, they're not those kind of receivers. And so kind of getting Guyton involved a little more, I think I would like. But also they weren't throwing deep to him at all, which I wish they were doing that more. It feels like all year, really, they didn't throw deep that much. Eckler is a stud, as you know, a stud year, and the dude's just a stud. There's not much to say about him. Defense overall, again, I thought they looked good, but they needed. And this is kind of true for the entire year, is that they needed someone besides Bosa to put pressure on the quarterback. It was basically Bosa and no one else. Bosa was in like the top 5 in pass rush productivity and hits and hurries and sacks for that first quarter, and I think the second was Nwosu, and he was like 80th in the entire out of all defenders. So they needed someone else. So yeah, that was my thoughts on the first quarter of the season. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions or anything, you can obviously leave a comment or a like and a review, and that would be great. And leave me a question or just your thoughts overall on the Chargers and how they looked that first season. Again, 3-1, looking pretty good, first in the division. So not much to complain about. Want to see more consistency, which again plays out the rest of the season. There's a reason why they didn't make the playoffs was the consistency issues. So even though they were 3-1, it didn't feel like, kind of didn't have a good grasp on what this team was, and yeah, thank you guys for listening. I hope to get the next episode out on the second quarter of the season, so games 5, 6, 7, 8 pretty soon. And just listen for that and keep an eye out for that. And thank you guys again for coming, and I appreciate it. And go Chargers, and we'll talk to you next episode.